that aspect. Today we will do the 6 characteristics of pure devotional service. When you perform this so-called Uttama Bhakti, then what happens? Not so-called. When you perform Uttama Bhakti, what happens? So I'll start with the Mangalacharan prayers and then we can get started. Om Ajnanatirandasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Tadati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guroho Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavanscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tvam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha. He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Shri Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Namam Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharini Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Vancha Kalpatarubhayascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivas Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Matsamo nasti papatma naparadhi chakaschana parihare pilajjame kimroe purushottama bhumau skalitapadanam bhumireva avalambanam tvayi jata paradhanam tvameva sharanam prabho. Adadanastrunandante idam yache punah punah Srimad Rupa Padam Bhojau Dulisyam Janma Janmani. Radhe Vrindavanadhishe Karunamritavahini Kripaya Tava Padabja Dasyam Mayam Pradiyataam. Govinda Vallabhe Radhe Prarthe Tvamaham Sada Tvadiyam Hiti Janatu Govindo Mam Tvayasam. Radha Radhita Radhesha Radhika Prana Vallabha Radha Ramana Vande Tvam Radhika Prema Nirjita. So let me share my screen so we can, as I was preparing for the class today, I wrote or scribbled some kind of notes, if you will. So please forgive me if they look a little rough, but nevertheless, I want to share. So I was just doing it earlier in the day, so it is not, may not be perfect, but you're able to see the screen?
Yes,
okay.
Prabhu.
All right. So, so one of the things that we are going to talk about is, well, Prabhu, you said, a pure devotional service or Uttama Bhakti or all those things are really great and they look fine on paper. What's in for me? Or in other words, what is the effect of doing this bhakti and how can it help me? So Srila Rupa Goswami characterizes, there are 6 characteristics of pure devotional service. First is technically called Kleishagni. Kleishagni is that one's own material distresses are completely removed, right? So here, if you can, I'll stop sharing. Let me share the screen again. Then this time I'm going to share the Nectar of Devotion by Srila Prabhupada. Then we can get into it. So here, Srila Prabhupada writes, this is Nectar of Devotion. This is only interspersed with the verses from the original verses from the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. The reason I chose this today is to give you an outline about what we are talking about. So, in the very first state, in the characteristics of pure devotional service, this is a particular place where Srila Prabhupada writes what is pure devotional service. In that, the example given is that Geetamrita, if you can just read this much.
Prabhuji, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. My dear mother, those who are my pure devotees and who have no desire for material benefit or philosophical speculation have their minds so much engaged in my service that they are never interested in asking me for anything except to be engaged in that service. They do not even beg to live in my abode with me.
Thank you. So there are 5 kinds of liberation, and it's mentioned that the pure devotees do not even seek for that. So then in Srila Prabhupada writes that these are the 6 characteristics of pure devotional service. The first thing is pure devotional service. So I need one person, so you can keep typing in the chat of who wants to read, and there is one person who can actually ask others to read. Who can volunteer that person to ask others to read? If not, I'll volunteer someone. Krishna, sorry.
Yes, Prabhu, I can read the names.
Yeah, you can ask. So you can also be the person who's looking out in the type. Yes. And then we can do. Before we go ahead, I would like to take great pleasure in introducing Koladip Pran Prabhu, who is my friend and my co-teacher. He will be doing few of the classes of Bhakti Shastri. We haven't figured out yet all the logistics, but just wanted to introduce to all the devotees. He is a very, very busy person, so he has kindly agreed to do 1 or 2 classes, but we'll try to figure out where we land. Koladip Prabhu, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, everyone. A special gratitude to Srivas Pandit Prabhu to include me in this service. Even though I'm not at all qualified, but Prabhu is giving me some opportunity to help myself to purify. And thank you everyone for joining today. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Koladip Prabhu. So here it is mentioned that sometimes one of the other things I found is that when you read Sanskrit, okay, if this question comes in exam, what are the 6 kinds of devotional service? For those who are expert in Sanskrit or for whom the Sanskrit comes really easy, then they can memorize the Sanskrit word and can translate it. I'll give one example. Did everybody hear about 12 Mahajanas? If you can type in the chat for, yeah. Everybody heard about it? Ryan and others? Right? Everybody heard about it? But when I ask the question, who are the 12 Mahajanas, we will really struggle. But when I ask the question, who are the 12 There is an echo. Somebody has to turn off their audio, I guess. Okay, thank you. So when I ask someone about who are the 12 Mahajanas, then you will struggle, because it's hard to remember. You need to have some sort of mnemonic, right? Name format. You need to have, okay, A, how many are there in A, B, C, some mnemonics like that, or something to help remember. In the exam, we had one of our questions that we had to remember was Krishna and Radharani have 19 marks that distinguish their lotus feet, and we had to remember at least 5 of them, and that was a hard challenge that we had to come up with, but we came up with a story. So and then we tried to remember like that. So you can think of mnemonics, because Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, unfortunately from an exam perspective, it is the supreme of all sweetness Srila Rupa Goswami gave us, is that the exam question can be, what are the 6 characteristics of pure devotional service? So you should be able to remember. Sanskrit, if you remember the verse, it's easy. Coming back to the topic of 12 Mahajanas, if you know the Sanskrit, you will never forget the 12 Mahajanas. Swayambhu Narada Shambhu Kumara Kapilo Manuhu Prahlada Janako Bhishmu Valirvaya Sakhirvayam Vadashaite Vicham. So you can see that in that one particular, the Sanskrit, when the memorization was such that in a song you could remember the verse and you could retain all the 12 Mahajanas. So one of the challenges, and probably one of the things that can somewhat frustrate the students, is how can I remember all these things? This is really too much. We have as it is, Rupa Goswami's writing is very terse and very, very compact. And on top of it, Srila Prabhupada has given the summary study, which is even more compact. So how can I remember all this? So that's a reason why I said that I made the diagram as I was reading today, so that you can make a diagram as well. I'll pass that sheet out. It's very, very poor scribbly writing. I will explain it. You can fare it. But nevertheless, that's one way to go about. So coming back to the topic at hand, there are 6 characteristics of pure devotional service. The first thing is, pure devotional service brings immediate relief from all kinds of material distress. So who wants to read? Krishangi Mataji, did somebody put in the chat who want to read these 6?
So far, no, Prabhu. Ram Babu Prabhu said yes.
All right, Ram Babu Prabhu, yours.
Thank you, Prabhu. First one, pure devotional service brings immediate relief from all kinds of material distress. Pure devotional service is the beginning of all auspiciousness. Pure devotional service automatically puts one in transcendental pleasure. Pure devotional service is rarely achieved. Those in pure devotional service derived even the conception of liberation. Pure devotional service is the only means to attract Krishna.
Thank you. So Srila Rupa Goswami, now what he does with this, so this is a verse that is given by Srila Rupa Goswami himself. How do we know it? So usually it is said 1:1:17, which means Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, which is the first part or the eastern part and the first chapter. And then there is verse number 17. So he gave this verse. Now, after giving the 6 characteristics, he will take one each and he'll break it down. So Kleishagni, Klesha means distress, and Agni means one which destroys, right? Vigna Vinash. So something like the Vigna. So that's how it is used. So in the Kleishagni, there are 3 types of kleshas or material miseries, which is said that here Srila Prabhupada writes this in this. Who wants to read this next one?
Ramalingam Prabhu.
Please go ahead.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Relief from material distress. In Bhagavad Gita, the Lord says that one should surrender unto Him, giving up all other engagements. The Lord also gives His word there that He will protect surrendered souls from the reactions of all sinful activities. Srila Rupa Goswami says that the distresses from sinful activities are due both to the sins themselves and to sins committed in our past lives. Generally, one commits sinful activities due to ignorance, but ignorance is no excuse for evading the reaction of sinful activities.
So here you can see Srila Prabhupada, he translates Rupa Goswami. He says, Kleshas tu papam tad bijam avidya cheti te tridha, which means klesha can come of 3 types, which is the sins or papam which we have committed in the previous life. Bijam, which is the sinful tendencies which are sitting in the core of our heart, and also due to ignorance. So here Srila Prabhupada he comments on all these things. He talks about ignorance here, and then he also talks about the sinful reactions and the tendencies to commit sinful reactions. So here there are three ways in which it is coming. Now, if you can see, this is what I marked in the diagram that I made. This is what I tried to mark. Let's see if I can find that one. You're able to see the screen?
Yes, Prabhu.
Okay, is it too small? We need to expand a little bit.
Yes, Prabhu.
Let me. Okay, I'll do this. You're able to see the screen?
Yes, Prabhu.
Yeah, so you can see in the pure devotional 6 characteristics, this is Kleishagni, which is the first part. And Rupa Goswami first gives the word Kleishagni Shubhada Moksha Laguta Krita Sudurlabha Sandrananda Visheshatma Sri Krishna Krishna. These are the 6 characteristics. So he breaks down each of them into this. So Kleishagni, he says that klesha or the material distresses happen because of 3 reasons. One is papam, which is our own sinful activities, and it is bijam, the tendencies, and avidya, ignorance. And this papam is further divided into 2, which is called prarabdha karma and which is called also aprarabdha karma. So we will read all these. Now, if you see having something like this, it will make it a little easier to see what the breakdown is and what are the characteristics and how the things are flowing. So far, so good. Any questions? Any comments? Rambabu, who had raised his hand. So.
Yeah. Prabhuji, actually, Papam and Bijam are also seems to be due to ignorance, avidya. I was just wondering how it is categorized under Kleishagni into 3. Basically, we commit sinful actions due to ignorance, right, Prabhu?
Not necessarily. For example, greed. Greed is not ignorance. Or lust is not ignorance.
Okay.
So avidya can mean the fact that you do not know the reactions of what we are getting into. So in any case, Srila Rupa Goswami says these three we accept is these three. The reason, the other reason is that Vidyam cha, yes. We remember that next row of instruction. Sorry, Isoparishad words.
Yeah, one should know the fourth essence and.
Correct. So the idea is that avidya can mean material vidya, and under which you can perform, sinful reactions. But then the papam can also come from some other things. Knowingly, one might violate some rules, right? You are not doing it out of avidya. You are doing it out of vidya. For example, there is a corrupt government official who very well knows that taking bribes is sin, but he or she does it anyways. So that is not avidya.
Okay, yeah, got it, bro.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. So far so good. I know it's a lot of material that's packed. So I'm trying to go a little slow, because of which we need to have extra classes. But then the whole idea is that you need to understand or grasp as much as you can, Zoom notwithstanding. It's mentioned that Zoom is such that it's really hard to grasp as much sitting in the class, but we will make do with what we can. Fair enough? All right. So as I showed in the diagram, then there are two types of sinful reactions, which is aprarabdha and then prarabdha. So the prarabdha means which is already started, which is mature. So if a person is undergoing sinful reactions as we speak, then it is in prarabdha karma. So I'll ask somebody to read so you'll get a better understanding.
Divyangi Lalita Mataji.
Sorry?
Divyangi Lalita Mataji.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu, Dandavat Pranam.
Hare Krishna.
Sinful activities are of two kinds, those which are mature and those which are not mature. The sinful activities for which we are suffering at the present moment are called mature. The many sinful activities stored within us for which we have not yet suffered are considered immature. For example, a man may have committed criminal acts but not yet been arrested for them. Now, as soon as he is detected, arrest is awaiting him. Similarly, for some of our sinful activities, we are awaiting distresses in the future, and for others which are mature, we are suffering at the present moment. In this way, there is a chain of sinful activities and their concomitant distresses, and the conditioned soul is suffering life after life due to these sins. He is suffering in the present life the results of sinful activities from his past life, and he is meanwhile creating further suffering for his future life. Mature sinful activities are exhibited if one is suffering from some chronic disease, if one is suffering from some legal implication, if one is born in a low and degraded family, or if one is uneducated or very ugly. There are many results of past sinful activities for which we are suffering at the present moment, and we may be suffering in the future due to our present sinful activities.
Thank you. Nice. So here you can see how if the sin is committed, then you don't get the results immediately. And oftentimes in this world, when people by hook or crook, they do some things and that are not congenial, even from an ethical perspective, and they make some progress or they are ahead, they become famous, they become wealthy or other kinds of things. Common people think that it is okay to do whatever to get ahead. But Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu says that the reactions won't be instantaneous. Everyone likes to have the concept in the movies, in the TV shows. It's very, very satisfying to see a villain who has been very, very atrocious and perpetrated a lot of criminal activities in the end that person is killed or he dies or he is imprisoned in prison, something happens, and it's very satisfying to see. But please understand that when one commits sinful reactions, there is no saying when it will fructify or what date will it fructify in future. One might be thinking, oh, I'm set for this life, but any time, any karmic activity from the past, especially the sinful karmic activity, can come and manifest. And that, my dear devotees, is called karma. When we see how materially one is great at one point of time and having a serious issues at another point of time, this is because of the sinful reactions happening. Now, Srila Rupa Goswami, he breaks it down, correct? So first of all, he started out with 6 characteristics of devotional service. Then he took Klesha and he broke down Klesha into 3 aspects, which is Papam, Bijam, and Avidya. So three types. Then Papam he broke down into 2, which is Aprarabdha and then Prarabdha. So Aprarabdha is immature and Prarabdha is mature. Prarabdha is the things that we are manifesting. It is said by some scholars that Prarabdha karma is the karma that is ordained or destined for this lifetime. For whatever Krishna will make, or the higher authorities will say, okay, this is the birth that you are going to take, and these are the karmas that you will experience. And astrologers who are really expert, they can determine in future the good and the bad that can happen, which are the reactions predestined for the mankind. So that's how it is. A prarabdha, it is just it's just laying dormant, but it will come some other time. And we, as a human beings, since time immemorial, we have been taking birth. Yeah, billions upon billions upon billions of bodies have been taken and given up. And we don't even know what sort of karma we performed a year ago, a month ago. Now you can see how the karmic reactions can come at which point of time. So the good news is that Srila Rupa Goswami starts giving the examples or shlokas from Srimad Bhagavatam which substantiate his viewpoint. And when we are giving classes or when we are speaking about scriptures, then it is imperative that we quote, our quotes have some backup from Shastras. Srila Rupa Goswami is Rupa Manjari, who is one of the Nitya Siddhas of the spiritual world. Their words are perfect, pure, but yet he was playing the role of an acharya. So he did quote from Srimad Bhagavatam. He quotes mainly from Srimad Bhagavatam, but he just quote from other scriptures as well. So he says one thing and then he quotes it. So here it is mentioned. Next, somebody can read this.
Anushri.
Hey, well, but of all these reactions to sinful deeds can immediately be stopped if we take to Krishna consciousness. As evidence for this, Rupa Goswami quotes from Srimad Bhagavatam, 11th Canto, 14th Chapter, verse 19. This verse is in connection with Lord Krishna's instruction to Uddhava, where he says, "My dear Uddhava, devotional service unto me is just like a blazing fire, which can burn any amount of fuel to ashes. So devotional service to the Lord and Krishna consciousness can burn up all the fuel of sinful activities." For example, in the Gita, Arjuna thought that fighting was a sinful activity, but Krishna engaged him on the battlefield under his order, and so the fighting became devotional service.
Thank you. So the purport is that as blazing fire can burn any amount of fuel to ashes. So the devotional service to Lord in Krishna consciousness can burn up all the fuel of sinful activities. And this is mentioned here as aprarabdha, which means the devotional service can take away all the unmanifested sinful reactions if you perform in a very serious fashion. This is being quoted by Srila Rupa Goswami from the Srimad Bhagavatam here to substantiate how devotional service can remove the aprarabdha reactions of a conditioned living entity. And then here he talks about the prarabdha or the manifested sinful reactions. And this is a beautiful verse from Srimad Bhagavatam, which I will recite and then I'll ask the next speaker to read. So this is the verse. This is a really, really nice verse from 333, 3rd canto, 33rd chapter, 6th verse. Yannamadhe ashravananu kirtana yaha pravanadyat smaranadapi kvache shvadopi sadya savanaya kalpate kutah punaste bhagavanu darshana. You can read the paragraph, please.
Ishwari Radha Devi Mataji.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Srila Rupa Goswami quotes another verse from the 3rd canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, 33rd chapter, verse 6, in which Devahuti addresses her son Kapiladev and says, "My dear Lord, there are 9 different kinds of devotional service, beginning from hearing and chanting. Anyone who hears about your pastimes, who chants about your glories, who offers you obeisances, who thinks of you, and in this way executes any of the 9 kinds of devotional service, even if he is born in a family of dog eaters, the lowest grade of mankind, becomes immediately qualified to perform sacrifices. As such, how is it possible that anyone actually engaged in devotional service in full Krishna consciousness has not become purified? It is not possible. One who is engaged in Krishna consciousness and devotional service has without doubt become freed from all contaminations of material sinful activities. Devotional service, therefore, has the power to actually nullify all kinds of reactions to sinful deeds. A devotee is nevertheless always alert not to commit any sinful activities. This is his specific qualification as a devotee. Thus, Srimad Bhagavatam states that by performing devotional service, a person who was born even in a family of dog eaters may become eligible to take part in the performance of the ritualistic ceremonies recommended in the Vedas.
Thank
Hare
you.
Krishna.
Hare Krishna. So in the next verse, how is it destroying the prarabdha karma or the sinful reactions? Because it is mentioned that a person who's born in the family of dog eaters, this is what exactly is the thing. So anyone who hears about your pastimes, who chants your glories, who offers obeisances, who thinks of you and in this way executes any of the 9 kinds of devotional service, even, this is the key here, even if he is born in the family of dog eaters, the lowest of mankind becomes immediately qualified to perform sacrifices. The implicit idea Rupa Goswami mentions in the next verses that if you are born in the family of a dog eater, your past life must have been extremely sinful. And that's the reason the manifestation of your past sinful activity is in the birth of the family of dog eaters. Now, if you perform devotional service, you are destroyed from the sin of taking birth in the family of dog eaters, and you are eligible to perform sacrifices or become a Brahmana, which means there is a destruction of that sinful reaction of being born in a dog eater family. Make sense? Questions? Please tell me if you didn't understand. I'm going to repeat it as many times as we need to. Shvadopi Shadya Shavanaya Kalpate Kutah Punaste Bhagavan Darshana. That even though you are born in the family of a dog eater, by performing devotional service, you become eligible for sacrifices, which means that that sin is destroyed by taking to pure devotional service to Krishna. Fair? Good? All right.
Prabhuji.
Yes.
Prabhuji, basically there is prarabdha karma and aprarabdha karma. And in the current body, we are experiencing the difficulties or the reactions of the prarabdha karma. So when we do devotion service, the aprarabdha karma also gets destroyed.
Correct.
But when the aprarabdha karma is being destroyed, but the person will not get any experience of that karma being destroyed. If it is prarabdha karma, he will have a direct experience of the sins being destroyed, right, Prabhu? But for aprarabdha karma, you may not see proportional, basically the direct experience of the karma being destroyed. I just want to know your, if you want to clarify on that.
That's a good question. You ask original questions, Ram Babu. So some devotees will say, oh my God, I've been chanting for so many years now, and nothing seemed to have changed. It's still the same. I mean, maybe over a period of time, Matajis might say, I have become less beautiful. By performing devotional service, I thought I'll be beautiful forever. Or Prabhus might say that over a period of time, I should have become richer. I should have got more and more and more money. It's not happening. Or even from that perspective, even for those who are sincere, jokes apart, even those who are sincere, they might say that, my material attachments, kind of okay, it's still there, still not there. But what's happening here? So how bhakti destroys your karma, it depends on Krishna. He might choose to destroy all the aprarabdha karma, and prarabdha seems to be floating around. The purification must be having less. So how he does it is his prerogative. But let's take logically, Srila Prabhupada said that if one is extremely serious in this very life, you can go back home, back to God. Did Prabhupada say that or not?
Yes.
Now,
Yes, he did. Yeah.
Thank you. Now, if there is a whole mountains and mountains of prarabdha karma that is sitting in the past, how can I go back home, back to Godhead if they are not destroyed? So when we do devotional service, because it doesn't seem, I'm just standing, I'm chanting, but nothing is happening, is because there are so much of aprarabdha karma is being destroyed, you will not even know it. And then on the present, then how can I know if I am advancing or not? You can see over a period of time, how much are you, or your whole bhava is in material objects or material fame, material name, material power, prestige. Those things will slowly slacken. Those things will no big deal. So that is one sense of advancement. And then we'll come to that point. A prarabdha is destroyed. Prarabdha is destroyed. And Rambhav Prabhu, the answer to your question is, if Srila Prabhupada said you could go back home, back to Godhead in this lifetime, which means a prarabdha has to be destroyed. Otherwise, you will be still in the material world. Is that helpful?
Yes, Prabhu.
Thank you. This is a very famous verse that is quoted often in the talks as well. Aprarabdha phalam papam kutam bijam phalonmukam kramena eva praliyeta Vishnu bhakti ratatmanam. So here, aprarabdha is destroyed. Good. Phalam papam is phalonmukham. Phalonmukham is prarabdha karma. It is destroyed. Then kutam and bijam, these two terms are being introduced here by Rupa Goswami. Bijam we did hear before, because here we can see we did hear the word bijam in this particular thing. So kutam and bijam refer to the tendencies of sinful activities in the heart. When there is the small seeds, they will fructify into plants. So same way, the tendencies to commit sins are there in the heart. And that is completely destroyed by performing pure devotional service to Krishna. So to quote that particular verse, it is mentioned here in this particular verse, how bija is destroyed. I think let's do these four, and let's read up till this point, and then we can go to this particular next one.
Ryan.
It is stated in the Padma Puran that there are 4 kinds of effects due to sinful activities, which are listed as follows. 1. The effect which is not yet fructified. 2. The effect which is lying as seed. 3. The effect which is already mature. And 4. The effect which is almost mature. It is also stated that all these 4 effects become immediately vanquished for those who surrender unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead Vishnu and become engaged in his devotional service in full Krishna consciousness. Those effects described as almost mature refer to the distress from which one is suffering at present, and the effects lying as seed are in the core of the heart, where there is a certain stock of sinful desires which are like seeds. The Sanskrit word kutam means that they are almost ready to produce the seed, or the effect of the seed. An immature effect refers to the case where the seedling has not yet begun. From this statement of Padma Puran, it is understood that material contamination is very subtle. Its beginning, its fruition and results, and how one suffers such results in the form of distress are part of a great chain. When one catches some disease, it is often very difficult to ascertain the cause of the disease, where it originated, and how it is maturing. The suffering of a disease, however, does not appear all of a sudden. It actually takes time. And as in the medical field, for precaution's sake, the doctor injects a vaccination to prevent the growing of contamination. The practical injection to stop all the fructifications of the seeds of our sinful activities is simply engagement in Krishna consciousness. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. So, COVID is a nice example. Where one catches COVID, nobody knows, yet you get it. So Ryan, one point I wanted to mention was that if you see this particular Sanskrit word, Ryan, this is called, if you see there is a dot or a period below the T, correct?
Yes.
Anna, are you there?
Yes.
Yeah, so it is, when there is a dot below the T, it becomes a hard T, so it becomes utham. Utham. Because in Sanskrit, we would say, does it matter? In Sanskrit, it does matter, because kutam and kutam can mean completely different things. So kutam is the seed, and kutam means where from. So there is the famous shloka by the Bhajagovindam fame, Kate Kantaha Kasye Pustraha Samsaroyam Ativa Vichitraha Kasyatvam Kutamayatha. Kutam can mean from where you have come from, and Kutam means the seed. Just wanted to clarify. But good job, Ryan, reading. Thank you. All right. So it's very subtle. As Srila Prabhupada writes, the material contamination is really, really, really subtle, where the seed of the sin is lying in the heart, and how does it fructify, so on and so forth. There is a lot of, it's subtle, as Srila Prabhupada says. Then in the next particular verse, Srila Rupa Goswami, he quotes one verse from Srimad Bhagavatam, where he says that unless one serves Krishna, so the exact phrase is used is Ishangri Sevaya, which means that unless you serve the lotus feet of Krishna, you cannot be purified by just tapo, dana, vratadibihi, and then so on and so forth. People think karmic reactions can be nullified. It's a zero-sum game, and I'm okay. The zero-sum game, in essence, is that there is something positive, it negates something negative, and the result is zero. I did something really terrible, and I will do something positive, and I'll cover it. Like I'll perform some charities, I'll give some or perform some charities. I'll perform austerities. I'll give some charities. I'll follow some specific vows and so on and so forth. So what's the problem with that thinking? And his thinking seemed to be nice, because do something negative, manage it with something positive. Both will work out. Both will balance out. What's the problem with that? Vrindaranya, any ideas? You're on mute, beta. Okay.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Sorry, Prabhu, could you repeat the question?
So I do something really horrible, and then I'll balance it out with something really positive. So, a lot of people, I don't know if you know the Balaji temple in India. They get millions and millions of dollars, one person giving donation. So it's said that a lot of people who earn money illegally, they go and put some money in Balaji's hundi. Maybe they earn 10 million and they $10,000, they say, please take it to the Lord and give it. So why can't, I can do something negative, but then I will just balance it out with something positive. So it's a zero-sum game.
You still get the reactions for both activities?
Excellent, good. But then the scriptures did authorize that you can do this. You can do this. And the answer to that question is that the tendency to commit sin is still there in the heart. I mean, so we know the AAA organization, right? Alcoholics, AA organization, Alcoholics Anonymous. They, there are relapses and lapses and relapses and so on and so forth. Some people are successful, some people they're terribly addicted. And they are sober for some time, and something triggers and they fall back, because the tendency to drink in the heart has not vanished completely. And there's the reason why you tend to do that again and again. And the same thing Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita. Vishaya vinivartante niraharasya dehina rasavarjam rasopyasya param drishtva anivartate. He says that by the means of either religious or social or maybe school or academic or business, I'm just holding back myself to kind of do all these, indulge in all these things, but the taste remains. It's always going on in my mind. And at the earliest opportunity, you tend to do it. But if one performs pure devotional service to Krishna, the taste automatically goes away. So that's what is being mentioned here. Sorry, just give me a minute here. Okay, thank you. Any more questions, more comments? There are some hands raised, so I will take some questions. We'll go slowly. It's okay if we don't do everything today. There is a reading schedule that we posted, but then these are really important points that need to be discussed in depth. Otherwise, you will really not follow what's going on, and it will leave you with a sense of questions. More questions, comments?
So I have a question about the Padma Purana verse.
Yes,
trying to map that to the English translation there. So the effect which is not justified, that will be aprarabdha phalam, Prabhu.
So nice. So let's eliminate the obvious. The effect which is lying as a seed is bijam. The effect that is already mature is prarabdha. The effect that is almost mature is a prarabdha, and the effect which is not yet fructified. Here, let me see. Effect which is not yet fructified. Yes, this is putam, this is bijam, this is prarabdha, and this is a prarabdha.
Okay, aprarabdha is almost mature. Okay, so what is the difference between which is not yet fructified and which is almost mature, Prabhu?
So the idea here is that kutam is the tendency which is not yet. I mean, kutam is the tendency to commit sin, and bijam is the seed, is the starting of that crime. So a person wants to rob a bank. Just merely the thought of robbing a bank is actually kutam, and bijam is the fact that his ideas are kind of taking shape. Now he will try to put in some efforts, maybe get some blueprints of the bank. So that is bijam. And robbing the bank is actually a prarabdha, and going to the prison and suffering is prarabdha. Kind of a crude example.
And then mapping to the earlier one that Rupa Goswami had said about like bijam, prarabdha, about papam. I think there was papam there, right, Prabhu? So papam, bijam, and ignorance.
So yeah, so Rupa Goswami doesn't talk about kutam. So kutam, he just let me show you that here. Rupa Goswami, he does not. Let's see. So he includes here. So he includes in the Kleishagni, he includes papam, he includes bijam, and he includes avidya. So papam is prarabdha and a prarabdha. Bijam and kutam is treated as one by Rupa Goswami, though he uses Vishnu Purana and we go deep into it. So he gives the next verse saying how bijam is destroyed and how avidya is destroyed by performing pure devotional service.
Got it. So thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you. All right, more questions? I think we do have more questions.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. I had a question. Please accept my humble obeisances.
Hare Krishna, Ankita Mataji, please accept my homage.
Prabhuji, when Krishna mentions in the Bhagavad Gita, Sarva Dharman Parityaja Mamekam Sharanam Raja Aham Tvam Sarva Papebhyo Mokshaini Ma Suchaha. He also says, I shall deliver all of you from sinful reactions. What kind of sinful reactions is that? Is that prarabdha or a prarabdha?
It's all in one package, Mataji. So it's because this particular verse says aprarabdha phalam papam kutam bijam phalonmukam kramena eva praliyeta Vishnu bhakti ratatmana. Krishna is saying, I'll completely deliver you from all sinful reactions. Don't worry. There is no, he is not specifically talking about a type of particular sinful reaction. Hope that helps.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So it's a safe bet to take mercy of Krishna. He's a wonderful personality. He's eminently capable of protecting all of us. And for those who surrender unto him, Krishna gives so many assurances in Bhagavad Gita about how his devotees, even though they may not reach the highest ideals or standards of devotional service, are still dear to him. And he terms those devotees as sadhu. Apichet Suracharo, the famous verse, he says they're still sadhus. So, other questions? All right, if there are no more questions, then we can continue. So here you can see how the bijam is destroyed, right? So, now the last one is avidya haratvam. This is the famous verse from Srimad Bhagavatam, where it is mentioned, Yat pada pankaja pala savilasa bhaktya, sorry, Yat pada pankaja pala savilasa bhaktya, karma sayam gratitam udgratayanti santaha, tadvanna riktamatayo yatayo pirudhas, Shroto ganastamaranam bhajavasudevam. Who's the next reader who wants to read this?
Timur Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Dandavat Pranam. There is another evidence in the fourth canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, 22nd chapter, verse 39, wherein Sanat Kumar says, "My dear king, the false ego of a human being is so strong that it keeps him in material existence as if tied up by a strong rope. Only the devotees can cut off the knot of this strong rope very easily by engaging themselves in Krishna consciousness. Others who are not in Krishna consciousness but are trying to become great mystics or great ritual performers cannot advance like the devotees. Therefore, it is the duty of everyone to engage himself in the activities of Krishna consciousness in order to be freed from the tight knot of false ego and engagement in material activities. This tight knot of false ego is due to ignorance. As long as one is ignorant about his identity, he is sure to act wrongly and thereby become entangled in material contamination."
Thank you.
Thank you.
So you can see how by performing pure devotional service to Krishna, avidya in the form of false ego is also destroyed. So this we cover the first aspect. That Srila Rupa Goswami talks a lot about Kleishagni, or how we are suffering, and it's pretty easily understandable. It's a world that is really struggling these days on multiple fronts. But by performing devotional service to Krishna, even that is destroyed. And Srila Rupa Goswami also uses another verse from Padma Purana to give this nice example. The next devotee can read. Yes, please.
Mahabhava Rasaraj Murtida Prabhu.
Yes. The ignorance of factual knowledge can also be dissipated by Krishna consciousness, as is confirmed in the Padma Purana as follows. Pure devotional service in Krishna consciousness is the highest enlightenment, and when such enlightenment is there, it is just like a blazing forest fire, killing all the unauspicious snakes of desire. The example is being given in this connection that when there is a forest fire, the extensive blazing automatically kills all the snakes in the forest. There are many snakes on the ground of the forest, and when a fire takes place, it burns the dried foliage, and the snakes are immediately attacked. Animals who have 4 legs can flee from the fire, at least try to flee, but the snakes are immediately killed. Similarly, the blazing fire of Krishna consciousness is so strong that the snakes of ignorance are immediately killed.
Thank you. So, ignorance can happen from 2 situations. One is identifying myself with the false ego or the body, and therefore you commit sins on that path, or even from the knowledge about Krishna himself. So Srila Rupa Goswami uses 2 examples. Usually when he uses 2 verses, or he quotes 2 verses to present the same point, usually there is slight difference between this. So you can see the reason the verses, of course, are not there in the Nectar of Devotion that you are all reading. The reason I chose this particular version of Nectar of Devotion, the words are all completely Srila Prabhupada's. It is just the Sanskrit shlokas have been inserted just to give the flow. So you get a flavor of how, when you're reading Srila Prabhupada's Nectar of Devotion without the Sanskrit shlokas, you will see how there is a methodology, how Rupa Goswami is laying out, and how Srila Prabhupada is translating accordingly. Right. All right.
Where do you get this, Prabhu?
I can post it on the WhatsApp group. If some devotees want it, they can take it.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Prabhu, this is not the one that we need?
No, this is the same thing. Actually, this is the same thing, Mata. This is exactly the same thing. No. From next class onwards, I'm going to use Nectar of Devotion. So what you are reading English is exactly the same. And what you are reading is what we need. The reason I chose this today is just to give you the flow of the verses, that's all. But from next class onwards, I'm going to go, it's the same thing, Mataji, it's exactly the same thing. I see a concerned look on your face. So let's clarify, because others might also have the same concerns. No, this is what the words are exactly Srila Prabhupada's here. The English, if you remove the Sanskrit verses, it is just nectar of devotion only. It is the exact same nectar of devotion which you are holding in your hand. It is just the Sanskrit verses have been introduced to give you a flavor of the flow of how the nectar of devotion is laid out, so that you get an idea. You won't be so, it wouldn't be so like everything is together and it doesn't make sense. Because if you read Nectar of Devotion, Srila Prabhupada quotes Rupa Goswami. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, in this verse is mentioned this, in this verse is mentioned, in this verse, you're like, what is going on here? I mean, is there some sort of flow to this? And I just wanted to bring the Sanskrit verses to show the flow. Fair enough? Ishwari Radhamataji, am I making myself clear?
Yes, that's good, Prabhu. But is it necessary that we need this version here that you're showing, or no?
No, you don't need it. You
Okay.
don't need it. You absolutely don't need it.
Okay.
Nothing will come from this in the exam. Nothing will come. So it's just, I'm just showing it as how the shloka flow is going. That's it. Otherwise, I can read purely from Nectar of Devotion, which I did in the past. Some devotees were like trying to find everything, and it was getting a little tough. So I just wanted to show you like this. And from the next class, we'll go back to the regular one. And then if the devotees want, then we'll come back to this one as well.
Prabhuji, this is good, Prabhuji. I mean, basically, it's easy to remember when there are verses, right? The flow is more clear.
Okay. No. It's complete. Thank you, Rambabu Prabhu, for the feedback. But it's everybody has their choice. But please note that this English is what is matters. Thank you. All right. So far, so good. Any questions? Because we do have to cover the 6 aspects of devotional service, and we have just completed 1 of 6. Is everybody feeling like, my God, the root canal at the dentist was much better. God forbid, never get anybody get a root canal. Or taking that exam, the kids taking that exam of the subject that I hate and I never prepared, and my teacher gave me a surprise test or quiz, whatever you want to call it. That was a walk in the park compared to what is being taught here. Anushri, any such thoughts? and just more questions. Mahabav, you're okay? All right. Cool. So the next one is Shubhatvam. So pure devotional service awards auspiciousness. Now, how do you call auspiciousness? What are the characteristics of auspiciousness? It's like, is there any characteristics? And Rupa Goswami gives 4 characteristics of auspiciousness. And so if I share the screen here, we'll go back to this one, and I'll share this as well, but please don't take it. This is really, really bad handwriting. We need to clear this up. So in Shubhada or auspiciousness are 4 characteristics. One is affection for all. It is pleasing to all. This is called Jagat Anurakta, and this is called Jagat Prina. And it grants auspiciousness, good qualities. By performing devotional service, you get automatically good qualities. Sadguna. And then it gives happiness, personal happiness. It's pleasing to everybody. You get affection for everybody, and it's personally pleasing to the heart as well. So these are the 4 aspects of Shubhada, which is the second part. Let's go see what Srila Prabhupada writes regarding that. All right. So here, please read this. Next person.
Vrindaranya.
Srila Rupa Goswami has given a definition of auspiciousness. At the present moment, groups of people are engaged in welfare activities in terms of society, community, or nation. There is even an attempt in the form of the United Nations for World Health Activity. But due to the shortcomings of limited national activities, such a general mass welfare program for the whole world is not practically possible. The Krishna consciousness movement, however, is so nice that it can render the highest benefit to the entire human race. Everyone can be attracted by this movement and everyone can feel the result. Therefore, Rupa Goswami and other learned scholars agree that a broad propaganda program for the Krishna consciousness movement of devotional service all over the world is the highest humanitarian welfare activity.
Thank you. And then Srila Rupa Goswami, he quotes a verse from Padma Purana saying that how Krishna consciousness can attract everybody. Jagat Prina Adi Advaya Pradatvam, which means that how it is two things, how it is pleasing to the whole world and how it makes the whole world a better place. Isn't that nice? You know, if pure devotional service can make the whole world a better place, it is a complete contrast to the craziness that we perceive that's going on in the world today. So we can read this next one.
Venkatesh Ragala Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji Dhanavram. How the Krishna conscious movement can attract the attention of the whole world and how each and every man can feel pleasure in the Krishna consciousness is stated in the Padma Purana as follows. A person who is engaged in devotional service in full Krishna consciousness is to be understood to be doing the best service to the whole world and to be pleasing everyone in the world. In addition to human society, he is pleasing even the trees and animals because they also become attracted by such a movement. A practical example of this was shown by Lord Chaitanya when he was traveling through the forests of Jharkhand in central India for spreading his Sankirtan movement. The tigers, the elephants, the deer, and all other wild animals joined him and were participating in their own ways by dancing and chanting Hare Krishna.
Thank you. So with this verse, Rupa Goswami covers two of the four aspects of devotional service, of auspiciousness, which is pleasing to the world and attracting the world. So that is done. The next one is Sadguna, which is how good qualities develop in one who is performing pure devotional service. This is a very famous verse from Srimad Bhagavatam. It's quoted by Srila Prabhupada often, and it's mentioned in quite a few places in his writings. Yasyasti bhaktir bhagavatya kinchana sarvair gunaistatra samasate sura harava bhaktasya kuto mahadguna manorathena sati davato vahihi. Next reader, please.
Sanskriti.
Hare Krishna. Furthermore, a person engaged in Krishna consciousness, acting in devotional service, can develop all the good qualities. Oh, I'm so sorry. My laptop just...
No problems. No.
Okay, wait. Sorry, it just stopped working. Furthermore, a person engaged in Krishna consciousness, acting in devotional service, can develop all the good qualities that are generally found in the demigods. It is said by Shukadev Goswami in the 5th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, 18th chapter, verse 12, "My dear king, persons who have unflinching faith in Krishna and are without any duplicity can develop all the good qualities of the demigods. On account of a devotee's high grade of Krishna consciousness, even the demigods like to live with him, and therefore it can be understood that the qualities of the demigods have developed within his body."
Thank you. And you can read this one more passage and then we can stop.
Keep going?
Yes, please.
Okay. On the other hand, a person who is not in Krishna consciousness has no good qualities. He may be highly educated from the academic point of view, but in the actual field of his activities, he can be seen to be baser than animals. Even though a person is highly educated academically, if he cannot go beyond the sphere of material activities, then he is sure to perform only material activities and thus remain impure. There are so many persons in the modern world who have been highly educated in the materialistic universities, but it is seen that they cannot take up the movement of Krishna consciousness and develop the high qualities of the demigods.
So one example I'll give, a little story from Mahabharata. So the Pandavas were in the forest. We know the story of how they lost their kingdom in the gambling match. And they went to the forest. And in the course of their travels in the forest, Yudhishthir Maharaj asked Arjuna to go to get weapons, because when the time comes for war, they need to be equipped with weapons. And Arjuna goes to heavenly planets. He is propositioned there by Urvashi, who wants to have a union, but Arjuna refuses and he is cursed to become a eunuch. Arjuna is really afraid and he goes, tells his father Indra that, I've been cursed. And Indra says, don't worry, it will be of use to you in future. And then, as the prognosis of the Lord of the demigods, when Arjuna and his brothers entered into the kingdom of Virat to live 1 year incognito, it was a hard challenge. Please understand that Pandavas suffered intensely. They were princes and they were enjoying all luxury and opulence. And for the 12 years, they had to live in the forest. And it was not congenial at all. They had to move from forest to forest. When they found that the resources were depleted, they would have occasional trysts with many kinds of demons. They would be subject to so many other inconveniences as well. For example, Durvasa, Muni, and so on and so forth. And the worst part of all this was Draupadi. She was born a princess. She had never seen such a life of hardship in the forest before. And it was really tough on her. But being the faithful wife, she stayed with her husbands for the 12 years. And then it seems to be an upgrade from living into the forest to living into a nice residential quarters, because though they were incognito, they were still having comfortable quarters in the kingdom of Virat. But for Mother Draupadi, that was the worst phase of her life, because she could take all these things, but to see her 5 husbands who were so illustrious and powerful warriors being in the menial service of some king, that was breaking her heart. But nevertheless, according to what they had been ordained, Pandavas were very righteous, and they agreed to stay in the kingdom of Virat and remain there. As the story goes, Maharaj Yudhishthira became the courtier in the king, and Bhima became the cook, Vallabha, head cook. Nakula and Sahadev, they took care of cows and horses. And Arjuna became Brihanala, or the eunuch teacher of
Princess Uttara.
Thank you, who was the daughter of King Virat. For 1 year, he taught Uttara how to dance, because he was an expert dancer. He acquired excellent skills, and Arjuna was able to teach everything to Uttara. After 1 year, when the Pandavas revealed themselves, King Virat became overjoyed. He couldn't believe his good fortune that these exalted, illustrious, and world-renowned Pandavas were staying in his kingdom incognito. It's like, anyways, no good example. And then, overjoyed at this sudden good fortune, King Virat told Arjuna that my daughter Uttara, you should accept her as your wife. And you'll please me like that. And Arjuna said that she is my pupil or my disciple, my student. She's like a daughter to me. And the second reason he gives is, if I marry her, then people will accuse me of some impropriety that might have happened during these times, because he was along with Uttara for many of the training sessions. And then Arjuna proposed that Uttara should marry his son Abhimanyu. And that's how the marriage between Abhimanyu and Uttara came about. Compared to the, so when Srila Prabhupada writes, in high educational institutions, so-called modern institutions, where professors are baser than animals, you can see how it becomes so common to have this kind of relationship between a professor and a student, where the student is supposed to be almost on, anybody who's your student is almost like a son or a daughter. So you can see, just wanted to add that point out here. Questions, comments, concerns? All right, so the next one is happiness. So you remember 4 characteristics of auspiciousness. One is, it is pleasing to the entire world, it is beneficial to the entire world, it is it develops good qualities, and also it is gives you happiness. Sugha Pradatvam, the 4th one. And Srila Rupa Goswami, he analyzes 3 kinds of happiness. He said there is happiness from sense gratification, there is happiness from Brahman realization, and there is happiness from pure devotional service to Krishna. So he will say that pure devotional service to Krishna is the highest, but we'll come back to the point about comparisons a little later. He says that when you perform pure devotional service to Krishna, you get such intense happiness that all other happinesses really do pale in comparison. It's not much. The happiness of liberation also seems to be not that great. What to speak of dharma, artha, and kama, which is religiosity, economic development, and sense gratification. Even that seems even that is like not much. When liberation seems meh, those are like insignificant. And then Rupa Goswami doesn't even spend too much time to explain the happiness from sense gratification, where Krishna himself says, yehi samsparsha jab hoga dukkha yonaya evate adyantavant kaunteya nate shramate bhuda. For those who are keeping list of the verses, it's from Bhagavad Gita, 5th chapter, 22nd verse. So, but Rupa Goswami says the happiness that comes from serving Krishna in a pure devotional service, if you take it as an ocean, and then the happiness from Brahman realization or mukti is not even an atomic portion of a drop of that ocean. That's the comparison it's mentioned here. So it gives you ultimate happiness. Questions, comments, concerns? I can't see the raised hands, so if somebody is there. All right. Okay. So far we have done, how many characteristics of pure devotional services are there? 6. Excellent, Ryan. What are those? Try it. I'm not putting you on spot. Just try your best.
There is relief from the material world. There is all auspiciousness, and it is the beginning of auspiciousness. Pure devotional service also brings transcendental pleasure. It is rarely achieved. It derides even the conception of liberation, and it attracts Krishna.
Excellent job, Ryan. Thank you. Beautiful. So it derives the concept of liberation is the next topic. So we discussed about Kleishagni and Shubhada. So the third concept we are going to discuss, the third characteristics, is called Moksha Laghuta Prita. In Sanskrit, Moksha means the liberation. Laghuta means small, insignificant, not very important. Krita means makes. So pure devotional service makes liberation insignificant. Literal translation is from Sanskrit. Okay. I'll just read this much and then the next devotees can read this. Thus, any person who has developed even a little quantity of pure devotional service can very easily kick out all other kinds of happiness derived from religiousness, economic development, sense gratification, and liberation. And Narada, and he quotes from the Narada Pancharatra, Sri Rupa Goswami. He quotes this particular verse. Yeah. Whoever is next to read, please read.
Vridashi Vishnupriya Mataji.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, I will read. In the Narada Pancharatra, it is also said that any person who has developed even a small amount of devotional service does not care a fig for any kind of happiness derived from religiousness, economic development, sense gratification, or the five kind of liberation. Any kind of happiness derived from religiousness, economic development, liberation, or sense gratification cannot even dare to enter into the heart of a pure devotee. It is stated that as the personal attendants and maid servant of a queen follows the queen with all respect and obeisances, similarly the joy of religiousness, economic development, sense gratification, and liberation from the devotional service of the Lord. In other words, a pure devotee does not lack any kind of happiness derived from any source. He does not want anything but service to Krishna. But even if he should have another desire, the Lord fulfill this without the devotees asking.
This is the nice part. Hare Krishna. Thank you, Mataji. Even if the devotee has perchance any desire, then Krishna will fulfill that desire without the devotee asking. And it's a fact we can read, we can see from the episode of Sudama Vipra, who visited Krishna in Dwaraka. Sudama Vipra, he was so poor that he didn't have anything to eat. And his wife said, your friend or your childhood classmate, who is Krishna, is now Prince of Dwaraka. He's a king. So please go to him and he will give you some money. Because in those days, the Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas will not accept employment from anyone. Only Shudras would accept employment, and Brahmanas would do their specific duties, and they would get they would maintain themselves. Likewise, the Kshatriyas and Vaishyas. So Sudama was very poor, and he went to Dwaraka to see Krishna, and he said, I need to get some gift to my friend. And she goes and begs some broken chudwa from the neighbors, and just this handful of chudwa, maybe this much handful of chudwa, and he wraps it up in his nice dhoti, and he goes off to meet Dwaraka, and then Krishna meets him and takes him to his own bedroom, and he washes the feet. This is the supreme absolute truth, washing the feet of his friend who is Brahmana. And then after he's comfortably situated, Krishna asks Sudama, what did you get for me? I see that you got something for me. What did you get for me? And Sudama was initially only, he was hesitant to take this broken chudwa to Krishna. After going to Dwaraka, he's like, what happened here? Krishna's his palace is made of the finest jewels. the most beautiful, softest cottons and pillows makes his bedsteads. Lakshmi Devi, the goddess of fortune, is actually fanning him while Krishna is giving arati to him. And everybody is exquisitely dressed. And Sudama is like, in this opulent setting, can I give even this? What would they feel? He was very embarrassed. But Krishna said, no, it looks like you got something from me. And he snatches that broken churva from Brahmana. He takes this and has it. And then, as we know the story of how Sudama, when he goes back, he finds that there is no longer his hut. Instead, in its place is a magnificent palace that rivals even Indra, the Lord of Heaven. And Sudama never asked Krishna. They talked about their childhood and growing up. And Sudama doesn't say anything to Krishna about wanting money. He's so happy that I have seen my friend and Supreme Lord. And when he comes back, you can see how Krishna fulfilled everything of Sudama even without Sudama asking. That is the specific nature. So Moksha Lagutakriti is that pure devotional service is such that, dharma, artha, kama, even moksha becomes insignificant. And therefore we find repeatedly the places in Bhagavatam where the devotees say that I want only your pure devotional service. I do not even want the highest position on this material existence. So that is the third characteristics of pure devotional service, which is moksha lagutakrita. Let me share. So far, any questions before we go on to the next one? Is everybody okay? Okay. At least we'll try to complete the 6 characteristics of pure devotional service today. We have 29 or 28 minutes or so. So let me share my screen. Then we have this is Sudarlava. Next devotee can read this, please.
Deepika Mataji.
Yes, ma'am. The rareness of pure devotional service. In the preliminary phase of spiritual life, there are different kinds of austerities, penances, and similar processes for attaining self-realization. However, even if an executor of these processes is without any material desire, he still cannot achieve devotional service, and aspiring by oneself alone to achieve devotional service is also not very hopeful, because Krishna does not agree to award devotional service to merely anyone. Krishna can easily offer a person material happiness or even liberation, but he does not agree very easily to award a person engagement in his devotional service. Devotional service can in fact be attained only through the mercy of a pure devotee. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya 19.151, it is said, by the mercy of the spiritual master, who is a pure devotee, and by the mercy of Krishna, one can achieve the platform of devotional service. There is no other way. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. So, Srila Rupa Goswami uses the word dvida. Dvida means 2 rarities are happening here. The one problem is that it is sadhana anugair anasangay. If one performs one's sadhana without attachment, even after a very, very long time, it is still difficult to obtain the mercy of or attain pure devotional service, which is bhava bhakti. I'll come to that in a minute. So there is that difficulty is that performing unattached devotional service for a long time, you will still not get the pure devotional service to Krishna. The second aspect is Krishna is reluctant to offer pure devotional service. You approach Krishna with material desires or even moksha, no problems, he'll give it. Hare Baba, he can give it even to the demons. Right? Demons in Vrindavan like Baka or Putana or Shishupal, or so many demons, Kamsa, they could get mukti. They really didn't perform any specific or serious devotionals or favorable devotional service to Krishna. So moksha, if you approach to Krishna, it's so easy for him to give. But pure bhakti, he will be a little reluctant. So there is the two aspects of difficulty in terms of it's not possible to be obtained on its own, and Krishna is reluctant to give it. And Srila Rupa Goswami, he goes ahead and quotes or backs up his statement with the statements of scriptures. So this, please read this one. The rarity here is mentioned is due to one's own sadhana performed for a long time. So the next devotee can read this, please.
The rarity of devotional service is also confirmed in the Tantra Shastra, where Lord Shiva says to Sati, "My dear Sati, if one is very fine philosopher, analyzing the different process of knowledge, he can achieve liberation from the material entanglement. By performance of the ritualistic sacrifices recommended in the Vedas, one can be elevated to the platform of pious endeavors, pious activities, and thereby enjoy the material comforts of life to the fullest extent. But all such endeavors can hardly offer anyone devotional service to the Lord, not even if one tries for it by such processes for many, many thousands of births. In Srimad Bhagavatam, it is also confirmed by Prahlad Maharaj that merely by personal efforts or by the instructions of higher authorities, one cannot attain to the stage of devotional service. One must become blessed by the dust of the lotus feet of a pure devotee, who is completely freed from the contamination of material desires."
Thank you. And this is the Srila Rupa Goswami quoting a verse from the Shastras confirming the fact that one cannot obtain pure devotional service or bhava bhakti based on just one's own efforts or one's own sadhana. And the second aspect is the Lord being reluctant to give devotional service. And we can discuss, it seems a little counterintuitive, but we can discuss more. So to quote that particular aspect of his statement, Srila Rupa Goswami quotes from Srimad Bhagavatam, 5th canto, 6th chapter, 18th verse. Rajan patir gururalam bhavatam yadunam Daivam priya kulapati kvacha kinkaro vaha astvevam anga bhajatam bhagavan mukundo muktim dadati karhichit smana bhakti yogam.
Itamrita?
In the 5th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, 6th chapter, verse 18, Shukadeva Goswami also says to Maharaj Parikshit, "My dear king, it is Lord Krishna, known as Mukunda, who is the eternal protector of the Pandavas and the Yadus. He is also your spiritual master and instructor in every respect. He is the only worshipable God for you. He is very dear and affectionate, and he is the director of all your activities, both individual and familial. And what's more, he sometimes carries out your orders as if he were your messenger. My dear king, how very fortunate are you, because for others, all these favors given to you by the Supreme Lord would not even been dreamt of. The purport to this verse is that the Lord easily offers liberation, but he rarely agrees to offer sole devotional service because of Because by devotional service, the Lord himself becomes purchased by the devotee.
This is the reason why. Because by devotional service, the Lord himself becomes purchased by the devotee. The Lord becomes subordinate to his own devotee. And the Lord will not give that easily. So this is the reason why pure devotional service, the fourth characteristic, is called Sudurlabha. So two reasons. Then, so we went through how many so far? We went through 4, I believe. So we went through Kleishagni, Shubhada, Moksha Lagatakrit, Sudurlabha. Sudurlabha has 2 aspects, cannot be attained by sadhana. Lord does not give easily. So these are the 2. Then the next characteristics of pure devotional service is called Sandrananda Visheshatma, which is Sandrananda Visheshatma is a exceedingly blissful type of joy. It is so intense, it's so sweet that nothing even touches it. And that's what is being discussed in the next one, which is the Sandrananda Visheshatma. Let's read that, and and then Sri Krishna Akarshani. Let's do those 2 things. And then I'll take some questions and then we can stop today. So Sandrananda Visheshatma, I'll just read this one and then next devotee can read. The happiness of becoming one with Brahman. Srila Rupa Goswami says that if Brahmananda, or the happiness of becoming one with the Supreme, is multiplied by 1 trillion fold, it still cannot compare to an atomic fraction of the happiness derived from the ocean of devotional service. So this is such an intense joy that most of the other schools like Mayavadis or impersonalists, they think that by merging into Brahman, it's the ultimate goal. While there is some happiness, there is no denying about that. But compared to the happiness that one gets by executing pure devotional service, it is extremely insignificant according to our preeminent Acharya, Srila Rupa Goswami. And to back up his statement, Srila Rupa Goswami gives statements from Hari Bhakti Shuddhodaya, and then he also quotes from Bhavartha Deepika. Now, Bhavartha Deepika is the commentary written by Srila Sridhar Swami on Srimad Bhagavatam. Our Vaishnava Acharyas revere this commentary, even though Sridhara Swami is a very unique personality, and we can have a whole class on Sridhara Swami to discuss his contributions. But the Bhavartha Deepika is his commentary or tika on Srimad Bhagavatam. So, so if the devotees can read these, the next, you can skip the Sanskrit.
Rohini?
Yes, Mata.
Hare Krishna. In the Hari Bhakti Shuddhodaya, Prahlad Maharaj, while satisfying Lord Nrsimhadev by his prayers, says, "My dear Lord of the universe, I am feeling transcendental pleasure in your presence and have become merged in the ocean of happiness. I now consider the happiness of Brahmananda to be no more than the water in the impression left by a cow's hoof in the earth compared to this ocean of bliss." Similarly, it is confirmed in the Bhavartha Deepika, Sridhar Swami's commentary on the Srimad Bhagavatam. "My dear Lord, some of the fortunate persons who are swimming in the ocean of your nectar of devotion and who are relishing the nectar of the narration of your pastimes certainly know ecstasies which immediately minimize the value of the happiness derived from religiousness, economic development, sense gratification, and liberation. Such a transcendental devotee regards any kind of happiness other than devotional service as no better than straw in the street."
Thank you, Rohini. So this is the Sandrananda Visheshatma, or the fifth quality. The last quality is called Sri Krishna Akarshani. So it is mentioned the only way to attract Krishna is through pure devotion service or prema bhakti, and that is being mentioned here. The next devotee can read this, attracting Krishna. All right, if there is nobody, I'll just read so that I can complete it. Attracting Krishna. Srila Rupa Goswami has stated that devotional service attracts even Krishna. Krishna attracts everyone, but devotional service attracts Krishna. The symbol of devotional service in the highest degree is Radharani. Krishna is called Madana Mohana, which means that he is so attractive that he can defeat the attraction of thousands of cupids. But Radharani is still more attractive, for she can even attract Krishna. Therefore, devotees call her Madana Mohana Mohini, the attractor of the cupid. To perform devotional service means to follow in the footsteps of Radharani, and devotees in Vrindavan put themselves under the care of Radharani in order to achieve perfection in their devotional service. In other words, devotional service is not an activity of material world. It's directly under the control of Radharani. In the Bhagavad Gita, it's confirmed that the Mahatmas, or great souls, are under the protection of the Daivi Prakriti, the internal energy, Radharani. So being directly under the control of internal potency of Krishna, devotional service attracts even Krishna himself. So after quoting this, he quotes the famous verse from Srimad Bhagavatam about Nasadayati Namam Yogo. It says that nothing attracts, Krishna is saying here that nothing attracts to me, like yoga or Sankhya or Dharma or, Swadhyaya or, performing austerities or renunciation as much as bhakti attracts me. So Krishna himself says in the Bhagavatam about the nature of how bhakti attracts him. So this kind of brings to end the first, and we can read this. Of course, we cannot cover or read everything, but one thing I highlighted here is that Srila Prabhupada makes an important point. A devotee always appreciates the activities of other devotees. And we can see Brihad Bhagavatamrita is just appreciation of other devotees by Narada Muni, and in the first part of Brihad Bhagavatamrita. One last point I want to leave and then take some questions is the fact that why don't I get that, Prabhu, you're talking of high things like Sandrananda Visheshatma, and then one this one I shared. You're talking of Sandrananda Visheshatma and all this high fluting stuff, but I don't get it. I mean, I don't experience it. So what's going on here? The idea here is that the Kleishagni and Shubhada, so bhakti has three divisions, which is sadhana bhakti, right? In this, the bhakti has three: sadhana, bhava, and prema bhakti. So Kleishagni and Shubhada are manifested when a devotee is doing pure devotional service on the platform of sadhana. Kleishagni, Shubhada, Moksha, Lagatakrit, and Sudurlabha manifest when the devotee is in bhava. And Kleishagni, Shubhada, Moksha, Lagatakrit, Sudurlabha, Sandrananda Visheshatma, and Sri Krishna Akarshani manifest, all these six manifest when they are in prema bhakti. So that's the reason why it is mentioned that on the level of prema or on the level of devotional service only can one attract Krishna. That is the preview that we are going to do next week when we meet to discuss further on this. So with that, I stop here today and take more questions, comments, or concerns.
Yeah, Prabhuji. So this is regarding the Sudurlabha aspect of the pure devotional service. So it was mentioned that it cannot be obtained by one's own sadhana, but the sadhana that we perform in ISKCON or any Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's Hridayas is under the instruction of the pure devotee. So we are trying to serve the spiritual master in his mission, and also, of course, we are trying to purify ourselves through the sadhana process. So looks like Krishna is also, he is not ready to give devotion service also, apart from the sadhana that we do. So how do we, how one should approach him? It's very difficult to, it seems to be a difficult position for a sadhaka. I heard Haribhashat Prabhu mentioning that one should fight to get that something in those words. But yeah, it may not be the stage for me to think about it, but just want to understand theoretically.
So Srila Prabhupada writes, he explains both of these nicely, and to one's own sadhana is not possible. At the same time, Krishna is reluctant to give. And Srila Prabhupada writes the only way to get that is to serve a pure devotee and get the dust of the feet of the devotee who's completely free of material contamination. In that way, it gets much more accessible. So Krishna is there. The Krishna does not give is a fact, but there are loopholes. And the loopholes are Krishna is very merciful to his devotees. And when his devotees pray on the behalf of the fallen conditioned soul, then Krishna will give them. Now, it's an interesting debate. Srila Prabhupada came to the US in 1965. And, some say that all those who helped him in his mission were already pure souls born, and they took birth in the US to assist Srila Prabhupada in his mission. But there are few who others say it is, and Prabhupada himself said that his mercy is what conferred the eligibility for many of his Western disciples to give up everything and perform pure devotional service to Krishna. So Krishna doesn't give, but then Sri Krishna Akarshani it says that Moksha Lagata Krit, that Krishna is willing to give moksha, but not pure devotional service, because Krishna is bound by the desire of his pure devotees. Now, when his pure devotees say, you give bhakti to this particular fellow, then Krishna is obliged. You see how he doesn't want to give, but the force of his pure devotees will oblige Krishna to give. So there is that linkage. So because, as you so rightly pointed out, we are serving our spiritual master. So there is every chance that Krishna will be merciful to give pure devotion. Is that helpful?
Yes, Prabhu. And looks like the Bhava Bhakti may not be sufficient to be a guru. It looks like, because Sri Krishna Akarshani happens at the Prema stage.
So even before we go to Prema, Bhava Bhakti itself is a very high platform. And Sri Krishna Akarshani is that when we are engaged in pastimes of Krishna, because by the definition, Hare Baba, unless you are on Prema, it's useless. Can be, somebody might bring up, somebody might say that, because, hey, what's your point? But this is Kleishagni and Shubhada already happens when one is just on the platform of sadhana stage. And that can lead to further, and Kleishagni is gone, then Shubhada comes. And as we cleanse our material contamination, slowly, it will come. Based on Rupa Goswami's Adav Shraddha, Tadav Sadhusanda. So it goes on that particular thing. So while Prema is the means to attract Krishna, but who are on that path of pure devotion, there are two types of pure devotees who are already on that path, whose intention is to be on that path. And both are considered pure devotees by Krishna, but the effects might be a little different. Those whose intentions are pure, but whose anarthas are really strong, they may take a little more time. Is that helpful, Rambabu Prabhu?
Yes, Prabhuji. So, my point was in the aspect of the spiritual master, right? So a spiritual master can be on a bhava stage, or he has to be on the platform of the prema stage.
He need not be. Srila Prabhupada writes in the Nectar of Instruction. Let's see. Well, let's look up that. That's an interesting question that you asked. I'll briefly touch upon it because it's a pretty involved topic, but I will share that screen. We'll go to the nectar of instruction. And I believe it is. Sorry for that difficulty. Let me look it out.
I did a search and it was showing something in NY 5th verse.
5th verse, yeah. Yeah, so it says.
Samadhikari Vaishnava. Yeah.
So, last two paragraphs, right? Okay, let me share that screen. So, you're able to see the screen?
Yes, bro.
Okay. In this verse, it's here we looked at. In this verse, Srila Rupa Goswami advises the devotee to be intelligent enough to distinguish between Kanishta Adhikari, Madhyama Adhikari, and Uttama Adhikari. The devotee should also know his position and should not try to imitate a devotee situated on the higher platform. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur has given some practical hints to the effect that an Uttama Adhikari Vaishnava can be recognized by his ability to convert many fallen souls into Vaishnavism. One should not become a spiritual master unless he has attained the platform of Uttama Adhikari. A neophyte Vaishnava or a Vaishnava situated on the intermediate platform can also accept disciples, but such disciples must be on the same platform, and it should be understood that they cannot advance very well towards the ultimate goal of life under his insufficient guidance. Therefore, a devotee should be careful to accept an Uttama Adhikari as a spiritual master. So, there is no need of bhava or prema to be a spiritual master. Based on the order of your spiritual master, you can accept it, but there is the limitation on how much you can guide your disciple. So, is that helpful?
Yes, Prabhuji.
Other questions? All right, if there are no more questions, I'll see you all next week. Thank you so much for your attention. And any final questions, comments, or concerns before? Thank you, Venkatesh Prabhu. Any final questions, comments, concerns? All right. I'll see you all next week then.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Yes, Hare Krishna.
Prabhu, I just wanted to check about the version of the NOD. In the first class, I think you said, sorry, just a second, Prabhu. That one of the old editions you said was not accurate in some places, Prabhu.
So can you turn to chapter 15 on that book?
Okay, fine.
Can you read the first few lines, please?
Examples of spontaneous devotional service can be easily seen in Krishna's direct associates in Vrindavana. The spontaneous dealings with the residents of Vrindavana in relationship with Krishna are called Raganuga. You want me to continue, Prabhu?
No, 1 minute. This 15. Spontaneous devotional service. So I thought it was 15. No? Let me look it up. Can you look up the word Ragatmika? Please. Let me see. Somebody can look up Ragatmika. Which I can look up the It's not there in it. Okay, let me look up now. 1 minute. Actually, on the 15th verse, where it is said Ragatmika, it should be where it is said Raganuga, it should be Ragatmika. That is the place where I'm looking up. Give me a minute.
Okay, Prabhu. Mine says Raganuga only, Prabhu.
No. So 1 minute. So that's where I am trying to get into. So actually that is Ragatmika Mataji in the newer versions. Who has a newer version? So Ishwari Radha Mataji, you have the newer version, right? Yeah. So what does it say in chapter 15 at the end of the first paragraph?
End of first paragraph?
Yeah, the last.
It's the last sentence?
Yeah.
Last sentence? Okay. Their spontaneous attitude is called Ragatmika Bhakti.
So that has to be corrected. So in the 15th chapter, instead of Raganuga, it should be Ragatmika. So that is one difference, Mata.
Is this version okay, Prabhu, or would you recommend getting the newer one, Prabhu? Except for this one?
I think there are few other changes. It's always better to get a new one. If you don't have a new one, we'll be very happy to ship from ISV.
Okay, Prabhu.
We'll be very happy to ship one to you from. You have to give me the address, and then we'll make sure that you get it.
Okay, Prabhu.
Thank you.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Yeah. Ishwari Radha.
Yes, Prabhu. Do we have a study guide for this book or verses for memorization?
Verses for memorization have already been sent out. I think they are part of WhatsApp group. If somebody wants to, Rambabu Prabhu, if you have it, if you can, I think it's there in WhatsApp group.
Yes, Prabhu, we received it. It was sent once, and
yeah. So we can discuss those next class if you want to. If we keep it ready, then we can discuss it. There are few compulsory verses, few optional verses, and then we can go over them as well. But
thank you for a wonderful class. It's very nice.
No, thank you, Matsu, for your attendance and for your attention. Thank you. Any other final points? I just pray that may, by the mercy of Srila, our own spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada, Rupa Goswami, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and ultimately the Supreme Lord Himself, may we enter, may we understand, may we stand on this great ocean of love of Godhead, and may we all assimilate and be worthy of getting to that position. Thank you, Krishna, for considering our request. So I'll see you all next week. Vansha Kalpatarubhyascha.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Thank you.
That was your last round of